All right, let's get this show on the road. Everything's good. Okay. Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1000 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1000 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at the Adverts 1978 album, Crossing the Red Sea. Crossing the Red Sea with the Adverts was released underneath the Bright label, produced by John Leckie with art direction from Nicholas DeVille, nationality UK, and a running time of 34 minutes and 48 seconds. Now in 1978, this was sort of the peak of the punk scene, especially in the UK, with great releases obviously from such as Sex Pistols or Germ-Free Adolescence from X-Ray Spex. And the Adverts seems like another offering of a pretty fantastic UK punk album. Because this time you get the usual punk fare, but with a bit more of a twist, as the singer of this band, T.V. Smith, has a much more enjoyable and traditional singing voice rather than the expected shouting sort of punk vocals that are heavily reliant on style. Right off the bat, you have the first track here called Chord Wonders, which was a huge hit for them at the time, and I think it's an important track simply because punk at the time was considered a very simple genre. People and critics heavily criticized punk for the fact that they said to be able to play a punk song, all you need to know is 3 chords. But the Adverts push that a step further and say, why need 3 chords? We just need 1. And they created this song, which would go on to be a massive hit at the time. And by doing this, they not only push the boundaries of punk in a way, but they're also completely defying the critics and almost showing just how punk they are by doing something clearly just out of spite. This one chord maintains a consistent high energy along with the rest of the band to create exactly what punk needed at the time. The second track, Bored Teenagers, is a good example of T.V. Smith's voice. I think amongst the album, this is one of my favorite performances from him, as the energy he brings, especially in the chorus here, is incredibly infectious and catchy and continues to remain in my head like an earworm. And I especially like at the 1 minute and 10-second mark, the song breaks away from this high tempo energy to make way to show off the drumming aspects more and the bass line of the song, which really does feel like a nice breather amongst this high tempo track. And luckily the Adverts seem to do this a few times on the album, doing this shift between slow and fast paced tempo to basically make things feel a little bit more varied and not just one note, which is ironic considering the opening track here. But even still, On the Roof is a good example of this shifting between soft and slow tempo, creating a nice dynamic of sounds. T.V. Smith's voice, too, in this track is much more eerie and has a sense of reverb applied to it to create a echoey and almost ghost-like effect, really adding to the atmosphere of the slower moments of this 3-minute track. And speaking of atmosphere, one of the most atmospheric tracks here is the song Bombsite Boys, where the first minute or so consists of a very Stooges-like opening that is really slow and continually building. It is very eerie in tone. It's got a very gradual build-up for the first minute that just feels as if it is just a low-tempo, relaxing track before breaking out after that first minute into an incredibly high-speed tempo. And this time bringing in a lot more of the shouting vocals that traditional punk is known for, and T.V. Smith really pushing that to its limits, more so than he typically does on this album with his melodic voice. And then you have the final song, Great British Mistake, which I think is an absolutely brilliant closer and really feels like a great way to close things off, especially after such a consistently enjoyable album with so many great tracks here and not a lot of filler. It's amazing to end this on such a high note the way they do. Because one thing punk is especially known for is being loud or being abrasive, being very in your face. And this track definitely pushes that much more than anything else on this album, as towards the end of this thing it becomes so incredibly loud and blaringly distorted that it almost feels like it is bordering onto noise rock in a way. As the absolute climax of this track, as he shouts the Great British Mistake with the rest of his bandmates, it becomes continually consuming with its amount of volume and absolute energy of the Adverts themselves. And I especially love the way they chant over and over the Great British Mistake, shouting at the top of their lungs, really bordering into as well as hardcore punk styles, something that wasn't taking off that much in the late 70s until the early 80s, but here you can really see that influence starting to be made. And honestly, it is quite different from the usual TV Smith fare on this album, and I think it is just amazing how much they managed to cover in just this short 34 minutes and feel like they're still doing something original in the punk scene, despite the fact that there have been numerous punk releases at the time. The Adverts definitely stand out on their own as far as punk bands go by doing many different things from the punk genre while still at the same time maintaining the same lane. And overall, I would definitely say that I thoroughly enjoyed this entire album and find myself consistently going back to this thing. I feel like over time, this album will only grow on me rather than diminish. So with that being said, the soft rating of this album came to an 8.4 out of 10, and I will go ahead and leave the hard rating at an 8.4 as well. And with how much I love this album and how great I think it is and pivotal in the punk scene in a way, I also think it is deserving of an essential listen. So it gets E for essential. That's pretty much it for this review. Let's go ahead and see what the next album we're listening to is in the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. Google random number generator 1 to 1001, generate number 79. Ooh, another low album. 79 being Country Joe and the Fish by Electric Music for the Mind and Body. Or is that vice versa from the artist and title? I'm not sure. But go ahead and listen to Electric Music for the Mind and Body by Country Joe and the Fish. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this video. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along and listen to every album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I'm signing off.